Okay, I believe it's time. We can call the meeting to order, please. Can we please do attendance roll call?
Urban,
Here.
Baber, Johnson,
Here.
Mazu,
Here.
Raber, Walker,
Here.
Stidham.
Great. The first item is our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve our consent agenda today?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. The next item is the approval of the November 16th, 2023 meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second? Perfect. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. We're moving right into the next item is the College of Western Idaho Boise Campus Development Update. I believe we have a presentation. Oh, yeah, you get to be on the official presentation side.
Tom Peterson with Ball Ventures Alquist. I'm the Chief Development Officer and Legal Counsel. I don't know if you need it, but 1144 South Silverstone Way. Thank you for allowing us to make this presentation. So earlier today, we were with the city of Boise and the related jurisdictions for our interdepartmental review for a few different components at our CWI campus site in Boise. Wanted to make an informal presentation to you today in the hopes that we can obtain any needed information, feedback, and direction so that when we come back, I anticipate coming back before you next month with an actual application for a river system permit. And I think I'm very grateful for the opportunity to try to get some informal feedback. We're trying to do this right. And we've been able to interact and engage with the various jurisdictions, whether it be, Parks and Rec or ACHD or Republic Services, going back several months so that we can deliver to CWI their building and a related site for those students who want to be attending class there in August of 2026. So we are working hard to make that happen, and we don't want to miss that target. Coming before you today is a simple measure to help expedite and facilitate that process. So I will just show you a few slides here as we go through. This is the CWI Whitewater Village. There has been some media on it already. Ball Ventures Alquist has partnered with College of Western Idaho, and also want to make mention that Ball Ventures Alquist has also partnered with EPC, which Fred Bruning, who used to be the present CEO of CenterCal. You may recognize CenterCal as the developer who's made the Village in Meridian and other such developments throughout the Western United States. Fred and his kind of top brass have left CenterCal, formed an entity and partnered with Ball Ventures Alquist, and they will play a significant role in this project as well. The project is located at the corner of Whitewater and Main Street with connectivity to the Boise Greenbelt and located, I think, perfectly and adjacently to the Quinn's Pond facilities. And I think there's some opportunities to make sure that we're enhancing that Greenbelt experience and making sure we're also pulling maybe the foot traffic off of there and up through the site in an appropriate way. Just very briefly, a kind of a 60-second overview of the site. And of course, this is just a landscape design. But what we have here, just to orient you a little bit, in the corner there of the site, and I guess I don't have a mouse or anything, but in the corner of the site, at the corner of Whitewater and Main, is the CWI building. That will be a facility that's a shared. There will be floors dedicated just for the student experience. It will be their campus here downtown, if you will, in Boise. The there will also be 2 floors of office with an option for CWI to grow into that space in the future. So it provides them the flexibility and financial milestones they need to make that facility work. Up on Whitewater, that larger facility is residential. And then in the middle, the large massing that you see in the middle of the site is a garage with residential wrapped around the front and side of the garage. Back down on, if you're following the orientation, back down on Main Street, next to the river is a retail building. And then closest to the river, that massing is anticipated to be a hotel site. We are far enough along in this project where we have the residential partners are progressing rapidly and are in the middle of design. On the retail partner, of course, as I mentioned, with CenterCal are moving rapidly, and we have a hotel partner who we're working with to hopefully what will happen is with staggered submissions to the city, construction of the site, because it's so dense, will all probably have to take place simultaneously. The objective and goal is that in the fall of 2026, all the site comes active at the same time. What I really wanted to focus on was of course, we'll have a floodplain application, but also a river system application. We've had preliminary discussions. I don't know if I absolutely love what I'm about to show you, but it's a start. And it's a vision that we have of trying to enhance what's there while at the same time preserving sort of the historic and cultural, I think, components of this area that we don't want to change. We don't want to make this the village at Meridian. We want to make it part of what's already existing with Quinn's Pond and have it be a cohesive experience. There is right now, I think there, and we talked about this in our interdepartmental review meeting earlier today. There is, I think, dirt there right now. So there's certainly an opportunity to enhance what's there currently, but to fit in as well. And our attempt, I can't tell you how many iterations we've had of this. This is our most recent iteration. Again, just trying to get your feedback and input. Some of the feedback we got today earlier, we've already started to implement, and that is to make sure that hotel that's depicted here in the screen, that's not hugging too close to the greenbelt, that there's an opportunity to still have a greenbelt experience without, sharing the food of those who are, dining outside on the patio. As you look at these different views, our architect and again with the CenterCal's retail team, they have a level of expertise that they're trying to weave into this site with still maintaining what is centrally important to Boise and the Parks Commission. The last few slides kind of depict this is going from that roundabout to the south and closer to the river. And finally, just one more view. So I think I'm going to go back to the site plan here. I think the few features and components that we've been really keyed in on that we're excited for, but also understanding that we need to work with this commission. We need to work with the city of Boise to make something that's palatable and that works well with the Greenbelt and Quinn's Pond. Based on the early feedback that we received, we had put in, and you can see there, a roundabout feature at the backside of our property that actually, and I will just state that actually needs to be pulled back more on our property and outside of that 70-foot buffer. And we understand that needs to be pulled out completely. We got initial feedback that, with what's there already, with the historic values of this area, with people wanting to go to Quinn's Pond, maybe there would be an opportunity for a drop off, right, where people can bring their kayaks and they can drop off there and pull out back through the site, where students and patrons and residents alike who are visiting the site can have connectivity to the Greenbelt and to Quinn's Pond and come up to restaurants and come up to retail, but have it be a fluid opportunity to connect our site with what is there, at the same time keeping it separate enough that it's contained and it's not just spilling onto the greenbelt. That's a tough needle to thread. And I think that what we're trying to do is get some feedback just here initially as to what you're seeing might be some things that you like and what you don't like, so that we can go back and incorporate those as we're really trying to expedite the process and get through design review and ultimately the construction documents. So that's a lot in a little bit of time, and I would be happy to just take questions and receive any input and feedback you might have.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I had an opportunity to meet with your team a couple of months ago, and I think there's still some more work here to do, and I haven't really even visited much with Trevor on setbacks and some of the requirements for the river permits and some of those things that we'll need to continue to work through. But the initial reaction I have with this is I think it's awesome. I think it's going to be a much needed addition to this area. We unfortunately don't have a lot of spaces along the river where we can create development like this. We hear from our citizens all the time that they want more things like this along the river, and particularly in this area where we have such active space here between Esther, Phase 1, Phase 2, Quinn's, very popular portion of the Greenbelt, but there's no services there. And so to have the retail piece that you're proposing, I think is something that personally I think is going to be well received. And I like the improvements that you're proposing along the Greenbelt. Just in some of those views are really is going to activate this space. And if you look at it now, there's nothing there. At the end of the day, it's basically a Greenbelt, raw river bank. And so seeing just some encouraging development that, and just in seeing what Tommy had showed us earlier, I think it was very encouraging just to see something that was going to really activate this space. And I think that we have very little opportunity along the river to do that. And this is a key place to do that. And also just hearing from your team that you really do want to hear from us. Yeah. Like, how do we make this a better space? I would say there probably is concerns about the proximity of the hotel that we'll need to work through. I love the roundabout idea for folks to be able to pull in there, not have to pay for parking, drop off kayaks, drop off folks for the at Bernadine Quinn Riverside Park, which is located adjacent to the roundabout. Quite honestly, I don't know how many people will take advantage of that, but at least it's something that the public would still have access to, which I think is important. But overall, from your initial concepts, again, I haven't had good conversations with Trevor about some of the permitting pieces, but it really does look like a good development in that spot. And it's going to happen. We knew something was going to occur there at some point in time. And I think this could be as good as we could ask for that, for that location. So I think it's, and you've got your company involved in it, which has done some amazing work in the city of Boise. So I'm excited to see it come to fruition. And I'd welcome any other commission comments on it. I know you're just kind of getting it for the first time to get a bird's eye view. I know you're all very familiar with that area. And
Madam Chair.
that area currently, so certainly would love to hear what you all have to say.
Thank you, Director. Commissioner Walker?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Mr. Peters, this looks, it's super exciting, the development, and to see that area finally get developed in the future will be amazing. Couple things I was thinking about is how, with the residential, what's the density, like how many units are going to be there in the residential space is one question I had. And then how will that impact as far as, have you guys, what have you learned? Have you done any traffic studies or anything of that nature yet?
Yeah. Let me address those two questions in two parts. So with respect to the traffic, we have been working, we met with ACHD very early on. In fact, that was one of the first meetings that we had. They are not going, based on what has been performed to date, no additional traffic studies are being required at this time by either ACHD or the city of Boise. That being said, you know, what's really critical to this site and what's depicted is a reflection of a focus on the student experience. And this is going to be an exciting site. There's ground level retail in all of the buildings, including the garage. There's residential, there's hotel, but this truly is a CWI site. And so to make sure that those students, whether they're walking or they're biking or they're taking the bus or they're driving, that there's an opportunity to not, form congestion. So in answer to your question, traffic studies have been completed, and based on those, ACHD is feeling that no additional, implements of mitigation need to be undertaken here. But we got to be very, very thoughtful on the circulation within the site so that it interacts well with Main Street and Whitewater and becomes a benefit to the student and not just a complication. I will add to that, and this isn't, it's tangentially related, but maybe not in direct answer to your question. The parking garage has been studied exhaustively so that we have the right number of stalls. A lot of the feedback that we've received is what happens when people don't have enough parking, they start spilling down the streets. And that actually is designed to have just the opposite effect, where it will pull people into the site because we have ample parking. So ACHD is the one issue that I think we have a pretty good handle on at this point. Because I've been talking now for 2 minutes, I forget the other part of your question, if you could.
The
Yeah.
density of that residential.
Yeah. We don't have that nailed down exactly yet. Our residential partner, they are playing with different models because there are two different components of the residential. The one is the wraparound component that will sit on top of retail and wrap around the garage. The second component of the residential is on that massing that's on the corner of Whitewater there. That particular is, and they will have parking of their own. And so based on kind of the fluid nature of finding the right mix for both of those, I don't have density for you, but within the next few weeks, we will have that nailed down because they will be coming in for the design review process as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners or council members?
I have one question.
Please.
Appreciate coming in advance of an application, but maybe it's more a question for you, Doug. What is our role in reviewing or approving this? There's no public space on the project, is there?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commission members, we would approve all of their river system permits. We also we will be making comments on the development as well. We won't have any approval process in the actual development itself, just how it engages and interacts with the river. That would be and that's what would come back to you all as well. As far as the rest of the development, it all go through planning and development services. And then city council, planning, P&Z, and then city council for approval after that.
So on the drawing before us right now, it looks like it potentially would be overlaying the setback. Is that the current plan?
Correct.
Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Councilmember Halliburton.
Go ahead, please.
Well, a couple things. First of all, Councilmember Nash couldn't make it today. He had some flooding going on at his house from all of the snow and everything else. So I'm not envying him at all. I would second everything that Doug said. This is a great development in this space. I don't think anybody's going to miss a big, huge surface level parking lot, mostly full of go-aheads. And I think a lot of these things can work really well. I do have a couple of questions. One, I think first, maybe kind of focus on the green belt. Are we going to have to be tearing up the green belt that exists there or detouring the green belt during construction?
Madam Chair, Council Member, the answer to that question is no. With means and methods of construction, the site will build from the outward in, meaning starting at Whitewater and Main Street with the CWI building. And the way that I'm pretty impressed with our construction team and what they can do, but no, and I think that was part of the feedback we got initially is we can't really have any interruption. And if there is an interruption, it's got to be, you know, measured in terms of hours and not days, and certainly not weeks. And that's our goal. I think that the way that we can do this will minimize, maybe not eliminate, but significantly minimize any disruption that might otherwise be expected to happen.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. That's good to know. I mean, I think if we can minimize the disruption, that's wonderful. If there was disruption, and if we were going to have to be, you know, tearing up or pulling up sections of the green belt, you know, I hope that this is an area that is really, really easy for people to walk and bike where they need to go, the folks that live there, the folks that are coming to it. And I hope that with the development, there actually is additional use of the green belt as well. And so it might just be something that's on our radar. If we do think that sections of the green belt are going to come up, is looking at the width, looking at the, you know, the surface type, making sure that we're doing a good job with what we might get with some anticipated extra traffic. So Doug, I don't know if you have any thoughts or comments there. I think that we've replaced this section recently, and I don't know width-wise if we're kind of at where we want to be, or if this is an area where we're looking to widen in the future.
Madam Chair, Commission members, Councilmember Halliburton, that's a great point. And we did have some preliminary discussions with Ball Ventures about any potential improvements. They were wide open to that. So there is a possibility that if we looked at this section because of this development, that we need to do some widening, maybe figure out a way to do that. They would be open to looking at that. We did, and you hit it right on the head, council member, we did replace most of this section over the last couple of years, so it's all concrete right now. But again, I would reiterate that our conversations with Ball Ventures has been very, very positive from the standpoint of they're wide open to what makes this work for the Greenbelt and for the interaction with Bernadine, not only the pond, but also Riverside Park.
Yeah, it would be a really big bummer to tear up such a nice smooth section that we just put in there. I do think that there is a future where we're looking at our green belt, especially in sections where there's going to be more congestion, and making sure that we've got it, you know, wide enough for people to be able to walk and bike and sometimes be able to do that right next to each other without actually going into the other lane. And so I think we've got some different areas around town. And again, I hope that this is an area with this development that gets used so much and is so popular at the city, that it becomes another one of those areas of the green belt that people are using a lot. So that might just be something that we have on, I think, Parks and Rec's radar, as well as the developers' radar. You know, if we really think that there's going to be a lot of people here, making sure that we've got the ability for the green belt to handle it. I did have one other question just related to the housing, and you may have said this earlier. I don't know that you've kind of nailed down exactly what the housing is going to be. But do you foresee it being, you know, more student focused? Do you foresee it being is there goals with affordability? Do you have any idea as far as what the types of units you're going to be looking for?
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and Council Member, this will not primarily be student housing. As we've been working early on with CWI, there might not be, based on that sort of dynamic within CWI, for that much of a need for student housing. That being said, what we're proposing now is a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom units that are market rate product units.
Yep, that's good to know. I mean, this area is it's such a prime area for walking, biking, and public transportation. We've got a great Valley Regional Transit line running next to it. And so, you know, I think that this serves as an example of, you know, some of the downtown development that we like to see that might not necessarily have to have you know, massive amounts of parking, and really kind of developing that lifestyle that's a little more walkable and bikeable. And if that's the case, you know, I think, again, just when we're looking at the Greenbelt, when we're looking at the frontage on Main Street and Whitewater Park Boulevard, you know, making sure that we're doing what we can to make it an enjoyable experience for those people walking and biking. But I appreciate you coming forward. I'm sure we'll see you again either here and probably again at council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question. Did you say that there would not be any workforce affordable housing in the project?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, as of right now, there's not any workforce or affordable housing that's slated on this site. With some of our other projects in downtown Boise, that has become a component that's been integrated. It's not currently being discussed at this particular site. And I think what we have tried to do at Ball Ventures Alquist is to make sure, I mean, and that's really the point and purpose of us being here is there's a right way to do these and there's an absolute wrong way to do these. And the right way to do it includes having conversations that need to be had for different components of the project in whole. And so we're always open to that.
Well, thank you for your time and the presentation today. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you very much.
Next on our agenda, we have the Ridge to Rivers Fall 2023 Trail Users Survey results presented by Superintendent Duplessis.
Good afternoon,
Welcome.
everyone. Lisa Duplessis, Superintendent of Foothills and Open Space. Sorry, these were together, so I'm just going to go through. There we go. Thank you for having me. I'm here this afternoon to talk to you about our annual survey, our Trail User Survey. We did this last fall and are just kind of compiling the results and sharing them with you. We had just over 3,400 responses, which was more than we had last year. Great. Sorry, I'm going to move this down a little. And I'm just going to go through some of the basic demographics and then talk to you about some of the implementations that we're making from the feedback that we heard. Basic demographic information, so ages that you can see. Man, woman. I'm just going through all the questions, so some of them are kind of boring, but we'll go through just the basics first. So how long have you lived in the Treasure Valley? This was a question that came up last year as well, and I think realizing that a lot of our users are not lifetime members of the Treasure Valley, so understanding that there's still a lot of education that we need to do as we have new users on the trail. How often people use the trail system. So as most of you know, if you're out on the trail system, it's busy. We have people that are out there every single day, every morning. So we have a high number of people that use the trail system very often. And then primary and secondary use. So hiking and biking is typical. A lot of the trail running. Haven't seen as many horses out this year, but the equestrians are there as well. So just so you can get a glance at that. And then we tried to ask some questions just as far as trying to make good decisions as we move forward with management decisions. So one of the things that we've talked about and you've heard about is our muddy trail conditions. So it's something we struggle with every single year. We tried to ask the question just to see, do seasonal closures, are you open to that? Is that something that you would be okay with just for the maintenance of the trails? And overwhelmingly, 90% of the users were very open to that. And it will really help us too. That actually is one of the things that I'll talk about at the end that we're making some changes to. So this is something we struggle with a lot. And it was really good to see that people were open and wanting to protect the integrity of the trails for the summer use. Another thing that we asked was when we do have large storm events. So last year we had quite a few large rain events that really washed out trails, did different things. And often that happens in sections of trails that either were social trails that we took on or weren't built sustainably. So we wanted to make sure people were okay with, if we identify different sections, are they okay with us kind of realigning those to be more sustainable? If we're able to do that in some locations, we won't have to do any maintenance on those in the spring and fall at all. So it makes a huge difference. And people, almost 95% of people were okay with that. Our interactive map that we started last year has been a really great tool. Not the interactive map, but we did trail conditions last year is what we started. But this is a question just to see how people use the website. Do they use that interactive map? It's what we've been really trying to push people to find current trail conditions, what all-weather options are out there, accessible trails. So just trying to see if people use this. And I think one of the things that we really noticed on here is that 30% of the people don't use the interactive map. So it's good for us to know and try and make that more user-friendly and what we tried to glean out of the narrative comments, what people were really looking for on the website and the interactive map. So those are some things that we've made changes to as well. So some of the takeaways that people talked about within the narrative of what they'd like to see on the map were really wanting to know the expertise of our trail crew. They're out there every day. We have over 30 years experience of people being out on the trails. So what were their updates? What were their favorite loops that they do? What are high traffic times that are out on the trails? So the trail crew has really been working on putting some of that information together to get out to the public. Another thing that we heard was that people wanted to see a QR code at trailheads for a link to the interactive map. So we're hoping that that might push some of that 30% that are not using the interactive map, pushing them to that. And those have actually already been installed at trailheads. Accessible trails. We installed our 2 accessible trails this spring. They've been really popular, kind of trying to understand what people are looking for in accessible trails. One of the things that we've talked about as a team is there's your strict ADA trail that you need to adhere to. There's lots of different standards. And I think as a team, we've really talked about enhancements. So it may not be the dedicated ADA experience, but what are some accessible enhancements that we can put into trails to make them better? And so we went ahead and asked kind of when you're looking at accessible features, what are the most important? And overwhelmingly, it was kind of the trail length and then also all-weather trail surface. So we've really been talking about where we can implement these 2 things specifically. And we have some spots identified where we're able to add kind of this better all-weather trail surface, which helps not only for accessibility, but when we're talking about muddy trail season, that's a big bonus as well. And then also a longer trail length. So I think sometimes in our accessible trails, they're short. It doesn't give a huge experience for someone that's wanting to get out there and kind of challenge themselves. So really looking at that as well. Just a basic question of how they get information about Ridge to Rivers. The website has always been our highest, which is great. We keep it up to date and the trail crew's in there every single day putting updates, especially this time of year. In the summer, it's once a week, but muddy trail season, we try to do every day. So some of the feedback that we got as well, not only to the QR codes and kind of wanting to know the loops and different things, were text alerts. So our team's been really great our communications team has kind of gotten this. We use this for Whitewater Park as well to update different flows and what waves they can use. So this will be something that people can opt into and find out. We're trying to kind of go with a green, yellow, red. What trails are closed? What trails should you avoid? And then what trails are green that you can stay on? So this will give occasional text just about closures, trail conditions, different things like that. We did hear the same feedback that we've heard for a long time. There's consistently kind of that separation of use. People either want all pedestrian, all bike. So that's kind of that constant thing that we work with. And I think getting out in the community and really trying to get the 2 groups together and making sure that they're educated and understand that there's a place for everyone. We deal with the dog poop. So that was another big comment that we got, just kind of reminding people to clean up after their pets. And then also just so much appreciation for our trail crew getting out there and maintaining almost 210 miles of trails. So overwhelmingly positive, just compliments for the team themselves. I think that's it. One of the things I wanted to mention too is going back to the trail closure question where people were really supportive of that. We have kind of identified 5 different spots across the system that we're going to try and close here within the next, it's weather dependent. And it's been kind of funny, everything's been frozen. We need to let it thaw out, the snow go away, and then we need a hard freeze so that our crews can get out there and post kind of temporary fences. But we should be working on that in the next couple weeks. So there's a couple spots that we've identified that will hopefully, it won't keep everyone off, but hopefully keep quite a few people off to where the maintenance is not as hard in the spring and keep off some of the damage on those trail sections. So with that, any questions that people have?
Madam Chair, Commission members, I just think it was encouraging to see that 90% response on do you support trail closures during inclement weather times. So we really, because we've kind of worked around that, like, do we close it? Do we not close it? And generally we hear from those that never want to see it close. So those are the ones that really reach out to us and are not happy about a trail getting closed for inclement issues. But to see that, I mean, that's something we can hang our hat on when you had 3,000, how many?
3,400.
3,400 responses to this. We don't get that kind of response on citywide surveys. So it's really encouraging to see that people have a vested interest in our Ridge to River system and that they support the management tools that your team is putting in place now. So that's very encouraging.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, yeah, I echo what Doug's saying. It's pretty amazing to see the high response on closures, on realignment. The idea of more all-weather trails, I think would be wonderful. I'm sure you guys are trying to figure out where, where to do them. But I really appreciate the new trails you've done. They're short, but they're still lovely trails, like in Camel's Back and all that, just for bird watching and that sort of thing. I think a lot of people are using them, so that's really wonderful. So I just look forward to seeing where you guys are gonna decide to focus on all weather and that sort of thing. I might have asked this last year, forgive me if I did. Has there been an assessment in the past about off-leash trail etiquette and rules, and if people, is there, is there a way to ask, are you good with these? Not that, I mean, I love them because we have a dog, but maybe that would be the focus of where you put people to educate or stuff, especially when like verbal, dogs that don't come back to their owners, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I saw the poop thing. I
Yeah.
figured that.
Madam Chair and Commission members, yes, that dog on leash, dog off leash is always a 50-50. You have people that want to have them on leash, off leash in their own areas. It's something we constantly battle with. I think you're highlighting a point, when people aren't following the rules or have off leash and on leash areas
Yeah.
where the altercations happen. So truthfully, having people and educating the community as a whole so that they feel willing to step up and speak up when they're out on the trails, hey, this is an on-leash dog area, off leash, but it's definitely a point of tension on the trails. And so I think the more, I look at our Happy Trails campaign and trying to get people just more vocal and involved in the trails, I think that will help. It's something that we're always going to run into, but we haven't ever really done an official assessment. But it's something we try to continually keep in our communication so people understand the etiquette.
Yeah, I mean, I just like data and stats. So I'm just curious, like a question is like users, do you hike with a dog? We don't know how many people respond that hike with dogs. That would be interesting too. But yeah, just to kind of get a feel for it, not to change anything, but to maybe, I know you have limited patrols, but if there's just been an area, where there's issues, it's tough sometimes, I think,
Yeah.
for the public to take on people with big dogs. I
Agreed.
think it's a little intimidating.
Agreed.
Probably. But thank you.
Yeah. And Madam Chair and Commission members, I think that's definitely a valid question. We've never asked about how many users take dogs on the trail. So it's definitely something to make note of and
I'm
might
just
be added
curious.
in the future. I think that's a good feedback.
Yeah, I agree. That's great. Would be a great add. But I really applaud the department continuing to engage the public in providing survey information and also the stellar communication and continuing to explore new ways to get the messages out. So it's always been a pleasure to see all those strides being made in those arenas, and all the work to create more accessible trails is wonderful as well. So I just wanted to call that piece out. So thank you for all
Thank
that
you.
work.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Halliburton.
Please go ahead.
Lisa, I did have one question. First, it's good to see you and congratulations on such a great survey. Anything that you can get, 3,400 people to show up and share their comments on, I think that's a pretty big success, especially when it's something that they care about as much, like our parks and our trails. In our last couple of surveys, we've had some questions about directional trails. And we had I think, I can't remember maybe when we first did Polecat, it was either 2020 or 2021, I forget. Maybe it was later than that. I'm curious if there was any feedback about additional directional trails, problems with the directional trails that we had, or if that was really included on this survey.
Yeah, Madam Chair, council members or commission members and council member Halliburton, we talked about that. We have asked that in the past. We did ask about the pilot program and then revisited it again last survey. And we kind of made the decision that we'd asked the question so many times, people were overwhelmingly in support and didn't feel like, I believe we worded it, and I won't get the exact wording right, but last survey, we did word it kind of in a way, are you okay with this for perpetuity? And the answer was yes. We have talked about additional, there are 2 other locations that we have identified as directional options. And I think that we're still on the fence about it. It, like anything else, is very controversial, whether people want it or not want it. We have dealt with some issues at Polecat with people going the wrong direction, which is dangerous. And actually what we don't want to do, we did implement new stop signs on Polecat to try and get people to go the correct way this last year.
Oh, yeah.
So it is still on the table. There are 2 more that we've talked about, but that's kind of why we didn't ask. That was such a specific pilot program that we felt like everybody was okay with it at this point. And so if we were to implement that again, we would ask those questions.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was curious, I think mainly because people always bring up some of the issues, I think that we saw in there as far as sharing the trail with different types of trail users. And I think one of the things that I was most impressed with some of the directional trail use was that you sometimes just didn't notice it as much because you were only interacting with about half as many people when you were all going the same direction, whether you were walking, biking, or how you were using it. So it wasn't necessarily that trail etiquette was getting better. It was just that you weren't running into as many people that you were frustrated with along the way. And
Yeah.
so I was that's kind of where that question came from. But I do appreciate the good work and the great response that we got from everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, we'll just thank you for the presentation. I've been told we do not require an executive session today. So in that case, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
I motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good day.